Before we begin our episode, AudioGAN is proud to be Design Up's podcast partner for the second time this year. Design Up is not just a conference, it's a design festival. From studio tours, masterclasses, workshops to interactive exhibits. I attended it last year and I must say it's one of a kind design and tech conference where there are clear takeaways and actionable insights from each sessions. This year too, they have a stellar speaker lineup from John Colco, Eric Quent, Payal Arora and many more. It's happening on 15th and 16th November in Bangalore. Visit designup.io for more details. Also on that note, keep talking about Design Up and AudioGAN on social media to get 2 free tickets for the conferences from AudioGAN. And now let's begin with our today's episode.
Welcome to AudioGAN with Kedar Nimkar, a podcast that documents insightful conversations with Indian designers, artists, musicians, writers, thinkers, and creatives of all types. Catch us on iTunes or visit audiogan.com for more GAN sessions. Here's your host, Kedar Nimkar.
It was around May 2005 that I stepped into a 3 BHK flat in Bandra next to Toto's garage at Pali Hill. Here I was, a TCS employee looking completely out of place, dressed in formals, trying to dip my toes in the world of advertising. There was someone sleeping on the couch in the living room. He pointed me to the kitchen in the left with his left leg. There I was. I first met then and now CEO and co-founder of Web-Chutney, Siddharth Rao. Siddharth was sitting on a kitchen platform dangling his leg. He asked me to sit in the chair in that 4x4 feet room with basic kitchen setup. This was an interview like no other. I got an opportunity to work with him for the next 3 years. 3 years which I shall always remember. Life takes us many places and the earth has rotated around 5,000 times through the journey from that 4x4 kitchen to this 4x4 recording studio. There has been a huge content and digital revolution in India, but one thing which remarkably stands out is that despite ups and downs in the advertising, Web-Chutney still remains India's most awarded digital agency and needless to say number one. Today I have Siddharth Rao with us on AudioGAN. Other than being an agency CEO, he's an angel investor and a serial entrepreneur. You can find a lot about him and how to be an entrepreneur and what big mistakes CEO did in his upcoming book, which has recently launched, How I Almost Blew It. We'll be speaking about that in the later part of the episode, but more importantly, we'll also try and explore where do award-winning ideas come from and how critical it is for a founder to be creatively minded or than just a businessman. So thank you, Siddharth, for giving your time, and it's a real honor to have you on AudioGAN.
Thank you for having me here, Kedar.
Yeah. Thank you and welcome to AudioGAN. So you have been creating award-winning campaigns, ideas since 2003, say from Chidiya Udi, which was for MakeMyTrip. If you can start by just you telling us what is an idea. I know you don't belong to that category of people generating ideas, but still, like, just to understand what is an idea and how has your definition about it evolved in the last 20 years. And this is a personal curiosity because I wanted to understand, is it just a kick to do something else, or is it really trying to identify a gap and then mitigate it with not so traditional formats of execution?
Yeah, so I guess at the core, things are pretty simple, right? No matter which medium we sort of manifest ideas into, finally it's just a message that requires to be served to a certain audience that let's say the marketeer intends. And you just make sure that the idea gets your communication gets noticed, right? But that said, at the core of every idea, and this has taken us a while to sort of understand this, and our more recent work is now reflecting it, that ideas are actually fundamentally analog, right? Creative ideas or insights, right? On which ideas are based on. And so there's nothing called a digital insight. There is nothing called a digital idea, really. It's just platform is just finally the end vehicle that you deliver the message with. So if you look at, you spoke about Chidiya Udi, it fundamentally was an analog idea. We played that game 100 times, so on and so forth. That's more of a, though that was a very tactical thing we did back in those days. Or if you see our current campaigns, right? Let's say the Uri one, which sort of won at Cannes. Again, the fundamental idea was clickbaiting users into sort of downloading something, right? And that has happened in the past. If I recently spoke somewhere and I gave them the example of this movie called Blue Lagoon. I think Brooke Shields starred in it. Maybe it was a debut movie, and it had a very sexy, if I can say that, poster out there in front of cinemas. We were not allowed to go in. We were underage then. But we all thought, that movies got content that really must be exciting to watch. So we've cobbled together some money between friends, found a house where the VCR was available and parents were away, and played that movie. And that runtime on that movie was like 114 minutes. Sat with all the excitement a bunch of teenagers could have. And at the end of it, when the credit rolls started rolling, we realized that there was nothing in the movie that we wanted to see, right? So we were, to put it mildly, we were wildly disappointed, right? But that was the original clickbait. So, and if you look at Uri, it's the same thing, right? What happened to us offline in the analog world, we just manifested that online. If you look at the Swiggy Voice of Hunger work, it was waveforms that look like things, right? Whether it's a sheikh kebab or samosa or a pizza slice. If you as a child, a lot of kids sort of used to look at clouds and see them as things, right? So clouds that if you Google cloud that look like things on Google, you'll see plenty of results which has a rendition of that. So again, an analog idea manifested in the digital world. If you look at Hagglebot, the third piece of work that really did well at Cannes and every other festival, is as analog as it gets, right? Indians love haggling. We had voice as an instrument. And so that was just the digital manifestation of what happens on the streets. So, yeah, if that answers.
Yeah, but is there any particular angle to that, that since the mediums are evolving, you borrow certain from the medium, or is it always analog?
Like I said, the way I think you express, manifest, you can just leverage what's available in digital and sort of put a layer on top of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fundamentally, all insights are analog, right? Digital just gives you, I think, unprecedented scale, right? Because at an organic level, if it's clever enough, if it can grab attention in the millions of messages consumers get over a period of time, which was probably not possible with print and TV, right? It was that way fairly restrictive. It's appointment based, so on and so forth, right? This is always on, digital is always on, so on and so forth. So I think the digital has strengths that you can sort of leverage to sort of uplift an idea tremendously.
Mm-hmm. So if I may say, which is a very cliche word, but ideas are cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I've also seen like bunch of interviews where a lot of people like Uber Travis was saying that idea is like 1% and execution is 99%. So what is your take on that? Because
I think that caters to more like startup ideas and business ideas and so on and so forth, right? Ideas are cheap. Of course, ideas are cheap. You can have those ideas in a shower moment and, or while just sort of whiling time away, sorry. But in the context of startups, yes, ideas are cheap. Execution is everything, right? There hasn't gone a week where some guy has sort of walked up to me and said, this startup, I had that idea 2 years ago, so on and so forth, right? So yeah, they're cheap. In the context of advertising, no, I think it takes, a bunch of exceptional people, team members to sort of come up with some astonishing ideas. I don't think they are cheap.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the context is different. I think Travis probably spoke about startups.
Mm-hmm.
That I completely agree. Execution is 99% of the work.
Mm-hmm. Because I remember when I was in Web Chutney, we were working on one Cry ke liye campaign, and we just spent 3 days and we couldn't get that level because Cry is like a sensitive topic and like a sensitive client. So yeah, it takes
effort, right?
Yeah,
and even in advertising, a lot of the work that we've done, like Hagglebot or Voice of Hunger, you may think that these are instantly viral ideas, right? That's really not the case. Hagglebot was, I think, work done coordinated between at least 4 countries, so therefore different time zones. It took us 3 months to sort of crack the code. There are various accents. There are a lot of nuances in that idea that needed to be sort of taken forward. In the case of Voice of Hunger, we the client really doubled, tripled down on it, right? So it took a lot of influencer marketing to get it off the ground. From the, from the first signs of it working, which is like, okay, we got like 1,000 user generated responses, right? To getting into, I think, about 150,000 till we last counted it. I mean, it did take, it wasn't cheap, right? I mean, virality is a very misunderstood sort of word in that sense.
I would like to draw a connect, is that in design, at least when we say ki, if it's executed really well, if it's designed really well, it's almost invisible. Right? Same, I think I can draw a parallel here that if the idea is like really cool in its inherent way, then it looks obvious, but a lot more depth has gone to it.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. There are a lot of times when people have seen Voice of, I mean, I was a part of some of the juries that sort of awarded the best work in the country. And a lot of people said, this is brilliant because I saw it and I thought, why the hell didn't I think of this? Or why didn't my team think of this? And that's sort of,
Cool. And winning Abbeys or other Indian advertising awards is like one, but Cannes is like totally different. So what was added, or what, like in your last few years, what have you seen is got added in terms of talent, obviously within the company, but there must be some sort of a invisible thing which is getting added for you to push that envelope and reach international level. So if you can just...
So it just beautifully came together this year. I mean, we've been what we call curious onlookers / innocent bystanders, watching a lot of agencies do really well at Cannes, and we'd been wondering for a while what will it take us to crack that particular code, and it's taken a lot of effort really, and a lot of it I think it's difficult to describe, but benchmarking continuously against this whole thing of should we do cause advertising, right? Advertising around causes, which is like the easiest way to wing an award, right? Should we do real work? What really stands out? I think the standards are very different when it comes to Cannes, for sure, right? There's no other festival that we've sort of obsessively focused on over the last couple of years. So yeah, I think there was a lot of collective learning, and if you notice, actually all three offices did well. I mean, one at Cannes, Bombay and Bangalore. But Delhi also had some great body of work, which, unfortunately didn't make the cut. But there's a lot of collective effort across these three teams to sort of come together, not work in isolation or silos. And there was a lot of effort, trust me, to sort of get there, convince clients to put, and these are real brands, these are real work. This is not, this is not Patli Gali, this is not ghost advertising, this is not cause advertising, right? This is not we'll change the world kind of appeals and so on and so forth, right? The kind of work that generally swings. So we are particularly proud about what we accomplished this year, and our resolve is to stick to the same template rather than sort of, go back to how can we scam and get away with it.
And if I can ask that at Cannes, is it how much business impact did it bring? Is that one of the parameters, or is it just pure idea? I mean, this is like a very ignorant question for me because I'm not following that. But yeah, if you can...
So it certainly did make a huge difference, right? This was the first time a digital agency won. This is the first time a digital agency led the entire mandate. We were bigger than, by a distance, larger than, and we were just fortunate. I mean, we're not arrogant about it, but at the moment, we were the largest medal winners at Cannes in terms of points, in terms of number of medals. We came home with 6. I think the second guy came with 2 or something like that. So I think in that sense, yeah, certainly, there has been a massive rub-off on the business side, right? See, clients have, anyway, especially in the last couple of years, clients have allowed for, thankfully, digital first agencies to lead their communication as such, right? And we have quite a roster of these clients, right? Chutney now is working with what we call the new age businesses like Flipkart, Swiggy. There's WeWork. There's Quicker. We just started engaging with Google, so on and so forth, right? So Uber, of course. How can I forget? So name it, and these. And we have we don't just have a seat on the table with these brands when it comes to their communication, right? We have a very large seat at the table now. So in that sense, the business impact has been obviously huge, right?
I'm sure it's not like a simple task, because like you have to build that credibility over a 20-year period, and then people have started realizing the value of it.
Like we keep telling ourselves and others that it took us 20 years to become an overnight success.
So on the idea front, I have one last question. So when Web Chutney was young and rebellious, so I remember you carried a tagline, "Did it," right? I could see, like, I remember the t-shirts where we just said, "We did it," right? So where you openly declared that we just did it. So what Siddharth Rao says now, I mean, it's pointing to the maturity of the brand Web Chutney, and also this is slightly philosophical, but only young people get ideas, or how important it is for an advertising agency to stay young, because it has to be relevant, right? So are there any other insights?
I don't think it's about really being young. It's got a lot to do about being relevant, right? Like and you can be relevant even if as you're aging, right? You can't control how young, or let's say the average age of an agency, you really can't control those factors, right?
But if you look at the graph, I think traditionally, if you see, there aren't any like big, like, I don't know whether how Piyush is still relevant. I don't know right now, frankly,
He's
because
still
I'm
creating beautiful work. Thank good you brought it up. I think we are only seeing it from our digital lens again, right? Like I said, all ideas are fundamentally analog, right? If you see even the most recent work that he did for Flipkart, the team actually, not just Piyush, the entire Ogilvy team, and we have huge amount of respect for Ogilvy. It's brilliant analog insight translated into a film, right? Doesn't matter whether the idea is digital or not. I'm sure the film is on YouTube and is doing equally well, right? So I don't think age got anything to do with it. The effort, I don't know Piyush really well, but from what I hear, the effort he actually puts in to sort of stay relevant, in terms of there's something fantastic I heard on a podcast the other day that I think it was Dave Trott who told a friend of mine, Anant, who mentioned this, that what the problem with creative directors is that they're getting rich, right? And the richer they're getting, the entire entire understanding of what the communication that they're supposed to build for the normal people, they're sort of completely sort of moving away from that, right? And I thought that was a beautiful sort of
insight,
problem statement with what's wrong with advertising overall, as he sort of mentioned it. And it's true around the world. I mean, not just India, right? So I think Piyush Balki, when he was around, if you see Prasoon's work, even if you see Aggie's work, Closer Home in Densu, it's deeply rooted into fundamental insights, mostly around an analog world, right? And I think, like we keep saying, these guys are, we from our lens conveniently think these guys are not relevant. They trust me, they are. And as difficult as is for them to cross over, like imagine, let's say, that generation of creative directors on Snapchat, right? It's hard to imagine that.
Okay.
It's equally difficult for us to sort of cross over. I mean, into the, to break that thing that, we are a digital agency. We're not a digital agency. We're just a digital first agency, right? But fundamentally, all ideas have to be rooted to what I said in the beginning, the analog world.
Wow. And coming to the second part, which is obviously the recently book which got launched. So I want to know more about it, and if you can set the background, what the book is about, and then I'll have some follow-up questions on that.
Sure. So the book is about journey of some of India's most successful entrepreneurs, right? And the premise of the book was there's enough and more written about their vanity milestones, right? Or not so great events, right? So vanity milestones mean fundraising, massively celebrated in the media. Economic Times has a whole page now called for startups, or things when they go wrong, which is layoffs, shutdowns, so on and so forth, right? So everything is sort of, I think the just the very highs and very lows are sort of highlighted. Everyone forgets that there's a very long journey that entrepreneurs go through. And their success is not by just one factor, a great idea or great financing or whatever, right? There's so many stories. So when you look at the best interviews that some of these guys have given otherwise, you don't find it really with any depth. And that's the problem with the media, not with them, right? So I've been, again, repeating the phrase, I've fence-sitted for the last 2 decades. Some of these guys are friends, some of these guys are mentors, some of them are both. Completely fascinated on how they sort of grew their business. Some of them were clients, like MakeMyTrip, Naukri, we worked together. Matrimony, we worked together. Book My Show, we worked together. I mean, you and I sort of worked on Book My Show. So, when you meet them person to person, there's a lot to talk about, near-death experiences while running the startup, dumb luck of being at the right place, right time, or dumb luck by a competition self-combusting itself by their mistakes, and therefore they become the last man standing, or mentorship that they got or didn't. There are a lot of these nuggets that I found were missing in the usual media narrative. And I thought there could be a book around it. And I think especially in non-fiction, I think there is, in the business category, there is so much, there's so many honest books that are waiting to be written. I sort of, tried my luck at it.
In fact, there's one nice YouTube channel, The Slow Interview or something. It's by Nilesh Mishra. And he interviews slightly senior people like Anurag Kashyap and some senior people.
What do you mean slightly senior?
As in,
they're more senior than Sanjeev Bikhchandani and Deep Kala.
No. But I'm saying in terms of in the media space, right?
Sure,
Nawazuddin Siddiqui or those kind of people.
Yeah.
And it's called Slow Interview. So he just talks at length, 1 hour. And just general stuff, right? It's not really the typical media type questions कि हम और आपका like बचपन में क्या करते थे and then what is your struggle period and not that stuff, but generally how do you handle fame and things like that. So it's nice. So when you pointed out it's a problem of media, I think not really, because the content generator has to be more conscious of what you're putting out in the market, right?
But that's the media itself, right? They're the ones who are putting out the content. And I don't mean to whatever, right? I mean, I think entrepreneur heart to heart is a much better conversation than a journalist who has obviously a bird's eye view of the industry.
Correct.
But doesn't necessarily know the nuances, right? I mean, I'm not saying I'm the greatest writer. I'm certainly not, right? The number of times the book was edited and the number of people who helped me put it together. I mean, I think I can write a book about that itself, right? That said, I mean, imagine me writing about the sports industry, right? I'm an avid sports watcher, but I'm not an expert or whatever. It's
correct. To frame those questions and to come up with the right relevancy. Also.
And having watched them over 20 years, right? I mean, you just I guess you can ask better questions, right?
Correct.
I mean, you being a part of Web Chutney, for instance, know far many more things than let's say a guy or girl who's doing a podcast around Web Chutney's journey.
Correct.
I mean, that's what I meant.
Yeah. So how critical is for the founder or entrepreneur to be creative as opposed to just being a businessman spotting growth opportunities? I mean, this is is it inherent quality for one to keep him or herself reinventing for growth? And this particular question comes from Kunal Shah's chapter which I read. So sometimes it's best that best to get a CEO than to force fit the founder to be CEO, right? And also I remember Anirban, our common friend, he put in this question saying that Siddharth always said that I'm not more like a founder. I'm more like a founder but not a CEO. So is that opinion changed, and what
is
about?
It's not changed at all, actually. I still think I still think I'm a startup guy, founder. Those definitions vary. I thrive best when I have small teams and so on and so forth. I've just been fortunate, and this is not being humble or whatever, right? Modest or about it. I think I've just completely lucked out by finding some great people who enjoy scale enjoy managing large teams, and therefore allowing Chutney to run like a federation, right? So whether it's Nishi, Gautam, whether it's Benny, who runs, the backbone of all the pieces, moving parts in Web Chutney. I mean, I've just been, honestly, I've lucked out, right? Like when I first interacted with Nishi or Gautam, I didn't know they'll turn out to be such fantastic leaders. Nishi, especially,
I've worked with him,
14 years or whatever, right? So yeah, I mean, it's a bit of that.
So how critical is like force-fitting a CEO to be the founder? I mean, this is from your conversations with so many.
I do think that for a very long part of the... So there's no right or wrong question, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no right or wrong answer to this. But given a choice, I think founders make better CEOs, right? That said, there are enough examples on, founders making terrible CEOs, right? So I guess it works till a certain level or what, and I think it's very individual, circumstantial, so on and so forth, right? So, I mean, for every Steve Jobs or a Zuckerberg or whatever, there are enough examples of, professional CEOs taking over startups or providing adult supervision. In my limited sort of understanding, like Eric Schmidt on Google, right? Like those years of adult supervision. Now he's just now he's not in the management team, but was it necessary? If you see Google's success, you would think yes, right? In the case of Yahoo, when they first got Tim Google, and I guess he helped them through the IPO and so on and so forth. The resulting batteries of CEOs, almost screwed it up, right? I mean, almost, they did eventually screw up, right? So no right or wrong, dude. But my first instinct is that founders make better CEOs.
But is it the case, like domain agnostic? For example, Pepsi and these people, you generally see like the founders are nowhere in the radar, right?
Yeah.
They're more like...
But they become institutions, right? They become massive institutions. They're not... they don't have to mutate or change as wildly as technology companies have to, right? So that's again a different context, right? Pepsi is an institution, right? Coke is an institution. I don't even know the CEO of Coca-Cola right now, right? And that said, it's not like they don't have challenges. I mean, Coke's trying to move into non-aerated stuff, and that's again a giant mutation to some extent. So yeah, I meant in the context of startups, right? Not institutions.
Fair enough. Can you share any examples which you stumbled upon while doing your research for your book, where the company stood out differently just because of the pure business or the service what they are offering, because the CEO, the founder, was creatively inclined as opposed to just being a growth expert or just expanding the business or things like that?
No, dude. Like, I don't,
I mean, I'll tell you one example. See, like, for example, if Airbnb's founders are designers, that reflects in the app, right? And the product. Same with ClearTrip. Whereas, say, Magic Bricks or InfoEdge, the guy which you mentioned, he's like a great growth expert, but the design or the philosophy, it slightly changes over. It reflects in the product somewhere.
I think you'll hate me for saying this, but art for art's sake, right? Especially in the context of business, right? It really doesn't augur well, right? You've seen that in the case of housing versus 99 acres and every other guy in the real estate classified space, right? In fact, Sanjeev told me something interesting on
yeah, we have a product and then...
Yeah, like he said that, when there's so much of noise about, the fucking map-based interface is the thing and not your silly text listings. It's in the, I think it's in the book. I don't think I edited it out, but he mentioned that they also developed their map-based interface, right? And they try to play, with you. I mean, whether try to understand whether users would prefer the map-based interface, and he said, I think
it was less than 10%.
Less than 10%, or maybe early teens or whatever. That was the percentage of users finally, whatever. And to his point, it was art for art's sake. closer to your heart, the clear trip example, I'm a fan, big user for flights and stuff like that. I'm not saying it's art for art's sake, but the user experience part is just one aspect of it, right? The dirty business around OTAs is around working with hotels and
Discounting.
pounding the street and building relationships, so on and so forth, right? So you can't have 15-inch 17-inch Macs and think that just because your product is superior you will win the race, right? So I'm a convert. I used to think Sudesh and I are the greatest thing ever in advertising. I mean, this is about 12 years ago, and we realized that no, I mean, people are building much more healthier businesses with half the chops, right? Because they were better businessmen. And that reality sort of sunk in, and we sort of, again, I'm overusing the word, but changed/mutated ourselves to suit that template, right? It's a business first. Everything else is sort of secondary, right? I mean, I know this is not the favorite part of our conversation for you, but
No.
the reality is a business is a
because,
business.
I understand where you're coming from, because my perception has changed because I moved from ClearTrip now to Book My Show, and Book My Show is at least for now, is like doing healthy, is being healthy, right? And the kind of percentage given to, say, user experience versus relationship with PVR and other places, it's like completely different, right? So I have stepped out of that bubble, but still there's like lot of influence of Steve Jobs, I think, because he was the only guy who could crack both, right? Marketing plus a great product. So we are under that influence, and then we think like just great design will sail us through, which I think I'm on the cusp right now.
I'm sure even, I'm certain behind Apple's great aesthetics and great branding, marketing, so on and so forth, there is hardcore distribution, logistics,
supply
sales,
chain, is
everything, right?
Yeah.
John Doerr was in India 14 years ago. This was just before Naukri's IPO. And Sanjeev Bikhchandani still is, and back then also was the poster boy, like one of the first internet startup going public. And they'd done a small round just before they went public. It was, not that Naukri needed money because they were going to raise from the public. It was more of a secondary transaction. And someone had asked, and I think it was a Thai event organized by Thai, and Sanjeev and John Doe were there, and someone asked that Naukri's homepage is, so fugly, right? Or something, yes, something more milder than that. And that question was to John Doerr, right? Saying, what do you think of Naukri's homepage? So he said, I agree, it's ugly, but, because they used to splinter it with 500 logos were pasted, right?
Yes.
Till Sanjeev told me, he said, I also thought it was ugly and I had a point of view, till Sanjeev told me how much money that homepage generates. Because the logo placement got money, right? And he said, I shut up. I mean, I had no further questions. So finally, finally it's a business, right? I'm not saying aesthetics are not important. I'm saying that itself won't take you where it has to take you, right?
I think, I don't know. I'm just right now at this age that I want to make some change and establish that there is a middle ground. It's not just pure dhanda.
I don't say that. I think Sudesh held the fort as far as I was a writer, he was a creative guy, right? I mean, he's an art guy. Both of us are creative people, and I think we eventually sort of defined our roles very, very specifically. I stopped interfering in creative. He held that fort. I went on and got the business. If we didn't have a great product or an offering, in our case, obviously we wouldn't have gotten where we've gotten to, right? At least, the foundations wouldn't have been built. That said, if I sucked at generating business, there are enough, it takes nothing to start an agency. It takes 2 ponytails and a dog to create an agency. I'm not being a dick about where we've gotten to. I'm saying it takes a lot more effort than just, passing around a couple of joints and coming up with great ideas, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and I have one last question related to the book. And this is because I know you slightly personally as well. So what made you publish this book? I mean, I'm sure it's not just sharing experiences. My hunch is that there's something more to it, like answering few unanswered questions or stupid questions which have been asked over a period of time. I mean, is there any subtext or is there any...
No, I think it was, like I said, there was lack of literature that I could figure out there's an opportunity.
Oh, but
Obviously,
that's like a public answer, right?
Yeah, no, but everyone has it on its on their bucket list, right? That one day I want to be a published author, right? So I also had that. Third is also, I'd been sort of wanting a personal project. Like I said, I've been Chutney runs on like a federation now. I mean, there are very few reasons. I think it's become an institution of sorts that we're very proud of. I needed a personal fix / project to sort of keep me engaged for a year. It took longer than a year, but I had that flexibility of time. Dentsu as a network is that way very hands off, and that's great. And it was mostly a fix. Everything that we celebrate in Chutney is is built by massive. There had been a while till since I'd taken responsibility of one thing, right? Chutney really is now responsibility of the teams that run the thing, right? So the book became a project that maybe I'll stick my neck out again and let's see whether the success of Chutney was a one-trick pony or can I do something else also that hopefully becomes successful. We're yet to discover whether it's a turkey. The book is a turkey or hits it out of the park.
Wow, great. Okay, so people have to buy. It's available on Amazon
and Flipkart and all leading bookstores.
Okay. I saw like few tweets here and there.
Yeah.
It's called How I Almost Blew It. It got launched last week.
21st August was when it officially released on Amazon.
Okay, yeah. I read few chapters. I didn't finish the entire book, but yeah, it's great insight. And all the best for your next venture, whatever you get into. I'm sure like it will be creative plus obviously business now that you have learned. On that note, it was like great talking to you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me, Kedar.
Yeah.
And that's it from today's Gyan session. Catch us on iTunes, Saavn, Stitcher or any podcasting app you use. Do rate us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Stay tuned for more Gyan on audiogyan.com. Till then, bye.